Okay, now we're going to talk about the specific form elements that we have in the blood. Remember, form elements are the cells that we have in the blood. So the very first one that we're going to talk about obviously is going to be the erythrocyte. Remember, erythrocyte is the same thing as the red blood cell. How many red blood cells we have? Well, it depends whether you are a male or a female. Regarding the number of red blood cells that you have, they all have the same form and function. The form is a biconcave shape, and the function is basically to transport gases, mainly oxygen and carbon dioxide. The form here is this one. It's called biconcave because if you're looking here, you have one concavity in here, right? This part is concave, and this part is concave. So that's why it's called that this is a biconcave disc. If you look at this specific drawing right here, you can see that everything is red. Therefore, there's no other shapes or nothing inside there. Meaning that the red blood cells, one very important characteristic that they have is that they do not have nucleus. No nucleus, no cell organelles. In particular, and very important, no mitochondria. What's the job of mitochondria? Oh, remember, that's the area in the red blood, in the cells, where we produce ATP through the process called cellular respiration. There are two kinds of cellular respiration. Remember, one of them is aerobic respiration. The other one is anaerobic respiration. In the case of aerobic respiration, obviously the mitochondria needs oxygen. Since the red blood cell doesn't have mitochondria, then the only type of cellular respiration that can happen in the red blood cell is going to be anaerobic respiration. Okay, so that is the shape and the function of the red blood cell. So if the red blood cell doesn't have nucleus or organelles, what does it have instead? What does it have inside here that allows it to transport gases? Well, inside there, what it's going to have is going to be hemoglobin. Okay, it's very important for you guys to understand that concept. The red blood cell does not have nucleus or cell organelles, in particular no mitochondria. Therefore, what is it that it's going to have instead? Instead, it's going to have inside hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a molecule that allows the red blood cell to transport gases, in particular oxygen and carbon dioxide. It's very important for you guys to remember this. So, if you scroll down, you're going to see that the red blood cell obviously requires the presence of hemoglobin in order to perform its job. Hemoglobin will attract the gases by a process called affinity. Affinity is another very important concept. The hemoglobin has more affinity for carbon dioxide than oxygen. So again, main job of the red blood cell is to transport gases. That's not the only job. It also helps us regulate the pH, for example. There's a very important chemical reaction that happens inside the red blood cell, which will allow us to regulate the pH. That regulation of pH is controlled by this chemical reaction that you see here. Carbon dioxide plus water is going to give you carbonic acid. The carbonic acid is going to dissociate into hydrogen plus bicarbonate. That free hydrogen is the one that is going to be used by the red blood cell in order to regulate the pH. So we have two main jobs then: transport of gases as well as regulation of pH. Okay, so right here again we have hemoglobin. Now, what's the composition of hemoglobin? What is the hemoglobin made of? Well, hemoglobin is made of heme and globin. That's what you see here, heme and globin. So if I ask you in the exam, what is the hemoglobin made of? Well, you will never gonna find easier question than like that. Why? Because what's the hemoglobin made of? It's made of heme and globin. How this hemoglobin is arranged so it can transport the gases. This is the arrangement of the hemoglobin. where the heme is this red part right here. And the globin is going to be this brown or blue chains that you're going to see right here. So how many globin chains you have? 4. 2 blue ones, also called alpha, and 2 brown ones, also called beta. In addition to that, each globin must have a heme, so that's why you have 1, 2, 3, and 4 hemes. So this is one hemoglobin, another one, and another one. Okay? So it's very important for you guys to understand this. What is the hemoglobin made of? Heme and globin. How many globins you have? 4. 2 alpha and 2 beta. How many hemes you have? You need 1 heme for every globin, therefore you must have 4 hemes. Looking here is mainly red, but right here in the middle, right here in the middle, what you're going to have is a very important substance. If you look right here, this is a heme. This part right here in the middle is going to be Fe. Fe in chemistry is iron. So the hemoglobin must have iron in order to perform its job. So let's review this a little bit then. What's the red blood cell composed of? Red blood cell is basically composed of a cell membrane and hemoglobin. Why? Because it doesn't have nucleus and it doesn't have cell organelles. Okay? So then what does it have instead? The red blood cell is going to have hemoglobin. Hemoglobin will allow the red blood cell to transport gases, in particular carbon dioxide and oxygen. Another job of the red blood cell is going to help us regulate the pH. Why? Because it has a very important enzyme that is going to catalyze the chemical reaction between carbon dioxide and water to give us free hydrogen as well as bicarbonate. So how many red blood cells do we have? It says in here quantities of erythropoietin and hemoglobin. Well, remember we covered this already. Red blood cells, we have 4 to 6 million red blood cells, where 4 to 5 is approximately the amount in females, and 5 to 6 million are approximately the number of red blood cells in males per microliter. What is the concentration of hemoglobin? Approximately 12 to 16 grams per deciliter. The lower the value usually belongs to female, higher the value it belongs to males. So very important is for you to know the values that you have, basically quantities. These are very important concepts that you need to know for this class. The erythrocyte life history, basically where it's created, for how long it's going to live, and where it dies. The red blood cells, or erythrocyte production, is going to be it's going to happen in the bone marrow by a process called erythropoiesis. Erythropoiesis is a process by which the cells that you have in your bone marrow will produce red blood cells. But all the cells in your blood are created by the bone marrow. And you know that you have at least 3 different kinds of cells: white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets. So therefore, that means there is one important cell inside your bone marrow that has the ability to produce 3 different lines of cells. These important cells that you have in your bone marrow are called stem cells. Stem cells, as you can see here in this graph, stem cell. It has the ability to produce red blood cells. You're going to see other graphs where the same stem cell is going to give you white blood cells, and the same stem cell is going to give you platelets. So what's the name of the process by which the bone marrow produces red blood cells? Erythropoiesis. Where the red blood cells come from? From a main cell, which is going to be a stem cell, because the stem cell has the ability to produce multiple different lines of cells. What hormone stimulates the production of red blood cells? This hormone is called erythropoietin. The erythropoietin is a hormone produced by your kidneys. So when we lose red blood cells, the kidneys are going to get this information, and as a consequence of that, it's going to produce erythropoietin. Erythropoietin will travel to your bone, and it's going to say, bone, stop producing more red blood cells. The stem cell is going to get stimulated, and you're going to produce more red blood cells. Okay, so this is, again, a very important concept. Now, once you produce a red blood cell, for how long does it live? The red blood cells usually live for 120 days. After that, they become old, and usually they get trapped and destroyed in the spleen. So, where do we produce red blood cells? In the bone marrow. For how long do they live? 120 days. Where do they get trapped and destroyed when they are old? In the spleen. What happens when you destroy the red blood cell? Well, when you destroy the membrane of the red blood cell, and that happens in the spleen, then obviously what you're going to have is what is left inside the red blood cell, which is going to be the hemoglobin. How many components the hemoglobin has? We said it has two, heme and globin. So therefore, the process of decomposing the hemoglobin is going to start at the level of your spleen, where you have macrophages, right? These specialized cells that are going to eat things. So the macrophages in your spleen are going to eat this hemoglobin that is free now that the red blood cell has exploded. The macrophages are going to eat the hemoglobin, and they're going to start decomposing the hemoglobin. Well, we said that we have heme and globin. Globin is a protein. The building block of a protein is an amino acid. So then when the macrophage gets the hemoglobin, it's going to destroy the globin, and it's going to break it into pieces of amino acids. The heme is a different process. The heme, the macrophage is going to get the heme, and it's going to destroy the heme first. It's going to transform that into biliverdin, and then it's going to transform that into bilirubin. Heme, we said that in the middle is going to have iron. So the iron is going to be also separated and is going to be stored. So let's review this part. So where do we produce red blood cells then? In the bone. After they are produced, for how long do they live? 120 days. What happens after 120 days? They get trapped in the spleen. What happens in there? The red blood cell explodes. The macrophages in the spleen are going to eat the hemoglobin by a process called phagocytosis. So then, here's the hemoglobin that was phagocytized by the macrophage. What are the components of the hemoglobin? Heme and globin. So the first step in destroying this inside the macrophage is going to be to separate the heme and the globin. We said that the globin is just a protein. So then that part is going to get destroyed into amino acids. Here you go. Now we said the heme has two parts, the red part and the iron. If we go to the previous figure, remember the brown and the blue were the globin, and the red with the green was the heme. The globins are going to get destroyed into amino acids, and the heme obviously is going to get destroyed, and you're going to get the free iron from the heme. So let's go back to this other figure. So the heme is going to get separated into iron, which is going to get stored in the liver for reuse if it's necessary. And the other part, the heme, is going to get transformed into bilirubin, biliverdin, bile, and then it is going to go to the feces.